Top tech house artists like Cloonee, HUGEL, and Dolla are achieving pro-level drum production by layering unconventional hip-hop and Latin percussion samples. So in this video, we're going to make percussive tech house drums by reverse engineering Cloonee and InntRaw's song, Stephanie. But get this, we're going to see if we can do this in under 30 minutes to spend less time overthinking and more time creating by following the 80-20 rule of drum production. What you're listening to is the finished song we'll be breaking down today. We'll be focusing on drum programming, groove, and sound selection, so you have a framework to follow instead of just relying on intuition. But it gets even better. If you want to take a closer look or save time by using any of these drum parts for your own productions, you can find a link to this video's project files in the description, as well as over 30 project files based on Beatport Top 100 hits, with new files being added weekly. Because having produced music for over 15 years, reverse engineering drums in this way is easily the fastest and most accurate way I've come across to move away from boring, repetitive, and mechanical drum loops and closer to what you hear in chart-topping tracks. The first secret is to drag the song you want your drums to sound like into your project so you can flick between that reference and what you are working on. The most efficient way is to focus on one drum layer at a time, first focusing on the pattern, then the sound selection, and finally the volume. But this reference track preparation is only the first part of this. The real magic is in the how and why we'll be choosing our sounds and writing our drum parts. So let's jump into Ableton right now to show you how you can easily replicate the sound, quality, and groove of your favorite music's drum tracks by harnessing the epic power of the 80-20 rule. So once that's kind of set up, we have the tracks we want to work with in here. We've built out a little structure track. So now we can kind of jump between that reference. If we want to work on the drums more, we can go to the intro. If we want to work on the bass more, we can go to where the sub kicks in, the vocals, the main drop. We can jump around a lot, and it's going to help us a lot when we're expanding the loop that we're about to make into a full track. So what I'll do next is really the thing here. I'm finding it's all about trying to validate the idea as quickly as possible with as least movements as possible. So something that I've been doing as a first step is using an AI stem separating software. In this example, I'm using Nuo stems. You can use whatever you can get your hands on. And there's two things that I'm doing here. First is I'm grabbing like a section of the song where there's the main area that I'm going to want to replicate using the reference. And then grabbing like, I don't know, whatever this might be, an 8 or 16 or 32 bar loop. And then exporting that out and just stem separating that. The main thing that I'm trying to grab here from the reference is the drums, and then it can come in handy later as we're building out like the bass and the synth and stuff. We can kind of isolate those parts and hear them more correctly, and we actually sample them out to replicate the sounds better. And then the other thing we'll be doing is doing the vocal, but I want to move in order of how I've actually been building this out. So let's start with the drums. So what I've exported out, or when I stemmed out the drums, this is kind of what that sounded like. Let me take that off. So that's just like the drum track separated. And why this is helpful is a couple things. One is we're going to be able to steal the individual samples in a really, really creative way. And then also as we're trying to replicate things, we can hear things in a lot closer detail. So one of the first things I'll do is start with the kick drum. So as you can see here, all these different colored things, basically just slicing out different pieces of the track. So just find a nice slice of the kick, isolate it by what you can do is you can grab it and press Command E on each other end of the point, and then grab it and then go Consolidate or Command J, and that'll make sure that you just have that one little slice isolated. And then what I've been doing for the kick that I think is pretty clever is over here, I've been using this thing called Drum Clone. And so let me open that up here. Is it here? Here. So what this is a cool little program. It's like a beta VST. But the cool thing is you can drag that slice in here and it'll do a good job of extracting it for you. So this is what it sounded like at first. So that is the slice I grabbed from the AI separated drum part. You can hear there's like some kind of like hi-hats and stuff in there. It's not that bad really, but we can do a little bit of a better job. And so what it'll do is it'll do the output, which is this. So it does a pretty nice job of snatching that kick drum. There's some like controls here. I find this doesn't do too much, but I was playing around with it. But it does a pretty nice job of taking out the kick drum. And then what I've been doing then is what you can do, actually I should show you this, is from here you can drag and drop the isolated sample into your own drum rack. And so that ends up sounding like this. And the reason that I find this useful is it's nice to move it out of that program. And then also the big thing is I'm finding that program, it does a really good job of isolating it, but the pitch is a little off. So in this instance, I transposed that kick down by 2 semitones to try to have it sound a little bit more closer to the kick of the, in the actual reference. Then that kind of like takes care of the sound. In terms of the pattern, take a look at this. Don't want you to get too confused right away, but have a look just at this. One of these for now. Basically, if you have a look, it's more or less just one of those like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 kicks. And then what I've done is, I think in some parts of this song, and this might have been more of a creative choice on my point, but having some of those little like da da da, kind of like little extra little kind of fill bits. Let me just play the kick for you, actually, to give you an idea of what this looks and sounds like. Let me turn off the stems. So there's basically just like that classic 4-on-the-4 pattern with like little extra hits every now and then to add almost like kind of like a bit of a fill. So then in terms of the sound, what we did is we extracted out that kick. And then what I also actually did is, if you could see here, there's 2 playing. I layered on top the actual kick from like that I extracted from the tune. And here's a little like a tool that I use that I made called the R kick. It's for reference kick. And this can be useful because what you can do is, the main thing is you drop a kick that you've stolen, sliced from any one of these, a reference. And then it's set up here with this filter envelope and filter frequency. When this filter envelope little knob is turned all the way to the right, and then you dial this filter frequency to the left, you can hear that it pulls out the hi-hat without it like disturbing the sound of the kick too much. So you still preserve the sound of the kick without the kind of like extra hi-hat, extra drums coming in. And what I did here is, if you have a look at the EQ on here, just rolling off a bit of the high in the actual like the sampler device of it, and then I've added an EQ to this extracted kick just to remove the low end. So what I'm doing here is the straight stolen sliced out kick, I'm taking the kind of more high end and mid end of it, and then like the low end, the main body, is coming from that cloned kick that's been extracted with that drum clone software. This way there's like a more higher quality, fuller low end, and that like character of the mids and tops is coming in from the actual extracted stolen kick. Hopefully that makes sense. Clever little way to kind of get a good amount of character and body and fullness out of the kick. I don't always layer them like that. Sometimes it's nice when the drum clone just steals it perfectly. That's ideal. But in this case, it didn't work that way. Another useful thing that I do sometimes, I'll point to a video actually here, the better system for stealing kick samples from pro artists. If you want to check this video out, this shows you how you can basically like steal one of those kicks, then right click it, and then in Ableton 12, which is my favorite reason for having Ableton 12, is, let's say you grab one of these samples, you can right click it and press show similar files, and this will show you, it'll use kind of like an AI machine learning kind of bit to find similar sounding samples within your library based on what you've extracted. So this can be another nice way to steal the kick and then find something a little bit more high quality that hasn't been like ripped out of the tune. It still sounds pretty good when you rip it straight, but it's nice to have your own samples, I feel like, more from a originality kind of perspective, and then also from quality can help a little bit too. Anyway, that's kind of a look at the kick. Kick is super important. So the idea is to build up the drums, same idea as before. You want to flick back and forth between your reference and what you're building. And this time we're focusing on the drums. And you can also use the AI stem separated bit to help here. And the thing is to simply start with what is calling to you the most, what seems to be the most important part of the drums. So for me, that started off with an open hi-hat. So let's have a look and listen to that. And so for the open hi-hat, it's playing that classic like offbeat pattern. So I've actually set up my template so that like this, I have this drum group set up with some of my favorite open hat sounds, and the pattern's already set up, so you don't have to like go through the process of jumping that in. Again, small things to make producing easier for you, and skip the things that you're doing all the time. In terms of the sound design, what I did was there's 3 layers. One is I actually extracted a slice of the open hat from the AI separated bit and actually incorporated that into this sound. And then I doubled it up with 2 sounds. What I did was I right clicked on the stem separated open hat that I extracted and then show similar sounds, and then found 2 sounds in my library, this open hi-hat and this kind of tambourine, and just layered them in. So that way we have like the stolen sound, but it's also being doubled up with sounds that you found using the similar sound functionality within Ableton. So neat little way there to make, because that also ends up sounding a little bit more professional, a little bit more unique, and a little bit more thicker and fuller and awesomer. In terms of any processing, we're just ducking it, making it a little tighter by removing some sustain, and then getting rid of quite a bit more of the low end here. Next thing I added in was the closed hat, so let's have a look and listen to that. And so for this, I was flicking back and forth with the reference, kind of listening to the closed hat. To simplify what I'm doing here, I'll always start with this right here. So this is just like the hat that's playing kind of on the same offbeat as the open hat. And this kind of reinforces and makes that open hat punch out a bit more, and is also useful in the arrangement because we can pull out the open hat and still have that driving bit going on there. Then I kind of added this extra shuffly bits. And the idea that I like to do is have them play like slightly different sounds throughout the area. And I'll kind of maybe start with like a section like this, build this out, get the groove correct, and then I'll copy it over and make like slight variations. So I think if you look between these two, the only difference is this last hat is playing here versus this one's playing down here. So it looks more complicated than it is. The idea is to just like start section by section, duplicate it over, make slight changes so that it's slowly evolving over time and sounds a bit more human. In terms of the sound design, I grabbed a couple using that similar sound feature. When I did the similar sound feature on the open hat, it showed, you can even see it here, there's a couple open hat sounds and a bunch of closed hat sounds too. So it was finding some closed hat sounds from the open hat, and I just dragged those onto the closed hat group here. Made it simpler for me. And then I also usually have a couple sounds that I like that I've taken the time to curate, so that way I'm not looking through hundreds of closed hat sounds. I have like my 6 or 7 go-to sounds there. And then in terms of processing, moving a bit of the attack so it's not hitting as hard, just moving down the sustain so it's not playing out as long, it's tighter, and then just dialing in, getting rid of a bunch of the low end. Next thing I added in was the snares. So it's just, this is a classic snare pattern. So it's on the 2, 4, 2, and 4. This one has that extra little kind of fill bit that comes in there. For this, I think I sliced out, I just sliced out from the AI separated drums, the snare, and did show similar sound, and then found these 2 sounds. This is the main sound, and this is that little extra hit. And then one other thing that's actually part of the pattern that's interesting is like this part here. The little like fill. Basically. And then in terms of the processing, tightening up the sustain there and removing a bit of the lows. But the main thing like with all of this is the volumes, getting the volumes right, flicking back and forth, getting the volumes. And then in terms of the clap, it's playing the same pattern as the snare. Sounds like that on its own, sounds like this. Kind of more high end. And then with the snare is more like body. And then so with the clap, what I'm doing is I have 2 sounds playing. One is like that 2 and 4, 2 and 4, 2 and 4, and then I have this extra sound playing on like the 4 and as like a little fill every once in a while, just to add a little bit of change over time, and make things a bit more human. For the clap, bringing up the sustain a little bit, using this one knob width plugin, which is a free width plugin, just mapped to the main knob here, pushing to the left and right, making it more stereo, making room in the middle for the snare, and then removing some of the low end. And then what I like to do with the drums at this point, so it sounds pretty sick, is layer in some top loops and like tops and breaks and stuff like that to make things a bit more interesting and dynamic, and also to this is a really good opportunity to add in your own character and vibe. So it's going to make things sound a little bit, start pushing away from the original drum loop a little bit. So the first one I added was this loop here. And solo it. So you can see here, main thing we're trying to reinforce is the hi-hat, like that shuffly hi-hat. That's really the main idea here. We have these core drum loop here, hits with MIDI in our one-shots, and then we're going to reinforce those core loops with some other loops. So it's more about reinforcing it, like I keep saying, as opposed to these drum loops being the main loop. It's kind of the way I like to do it. A good way to do that is to sometimes have it on the loop on beats set to transients, and then have it show the arrows pointing to the right, and then dial this back. It's going to bring down the sustain of the transient, so it's tighter, and I feel like that helps it blend in a bit more with those core loops. Volume to taste, kind of standard channel strip stuff that I've been going over. Just going to kind of move through it next. Next is this next to clear. Solo it out sounds like this. So again, this is kind of mostly adding kind of that like shuffly hi-hat stuff, but there's a little bit of subtle snares and adding little fillage and like humanization and reinforcing those core loops a little bit. And then the last one that I added, because this is just a ride, actually, I'll talk about the ride too. This next loop here. And alone. You can kind of hear, this is really subtle, but it's kind of like weird little sounds like that. Adding in more of like a percussion element to things, making things a little bit more unique, dialed in quite a bit. And the last thing is like just a little ride loop. Soloed. So this is more of an arrangement thing, to be completely honest. It's not playing throughout the whole track. It's just at certain points as an arrangement trick to add additional energy throughout the track. It's a nice little trick you can do. Closed hat for a few bars, then open hat to increase the energy, and then also add in a ride after to further increase the energy as an arrangement trick for you there.
Hi, my friend, Matt from Best Friends Club here. And if you've been paying attention, then you probably figured out what the 80-20 rule is when it comes to building out your drums. The goal here is to get 80% of the results with only 20% of the time, energy, or effort. And because the first key to the 80-20 rule for drums is to use a reference track, we're making sure that we're effortlessly hitting 80% of a very professional sounding track. In particular, we focus on nailing the pattern, sound selection, and the volume compared to the reference track, so that we keep things fast and focused as we're building out our drums. The second key of the 80-20 rule here is to mix as you go in an extremely streamlined way by only focusing on the volume, as well as a simple repeatable channel strip for each track that we're adding to our drums. The third and final key is to repurpose your old project files and to build up a suite of powerful templates, Ableton racks, and one knob effects that you've personalized and curated over time. If you'd like to get a head start by downloading all the racks, templates, and all the files that you've seen me use in the Ableton project file for this video, or if you'd just like to take a closer look at any of the techniques or tracks you saw me work on in this video at your own pace, you can find a link to this video's project files on screen now and at the second link that's in the YouTube description. I'm recreating a different song from the Beatport top charts every single week and making the project files available to anyone who wants them. You'll also get access to a private Discord where you can ask me and the community questions, as well as share tracks for feedback. If you or your music are not quite ready for a shot in the arm like that, I've also made you a completely free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that have helped me figure out how to completely finish one new song each and every single week. And you can grab that free Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit by visiting the first link that's in the YouTube description here. However, if you just feel like staying on YouTube for now, that's totally fine. Save that link for later. And check out this playlist of videos where I remake drums from other songs from the Beatport top charts. Or if you want to take what you've learned in this video to the next level, definitely check out this video right here.